Congresswoman Michele Bachmann's performance in the Republican debate this week has been generally portrayed as a success. It's helped her to establish herself as the frontrunner in the race to be the grassroots ideological alternative in the Republican primary to whatever Juan establishment candidate eventually seizes the actual frontrunner mantle. Cough, Mitt Romney, cough. Bachmann raised more than $13 million for her 2010 House campaign. $13 million, more than any other single House candidate. He founded the Tea Party caucus in Congress. When Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee decided not to run, it opened up a wide space for a credible evangelical candidate. The born-again culture warrior Bachmann is as well positioned as anyone to capture the evangelical grassroots energy that delivered a victory for Huckabee in Iowa in 2008. During the debate Monday night, Bachmann spoke directly to her base.
I am 100% pro-life. I've given birth to 5 babies, and I've taken 23 foster children into my home. I believe in the dignity of life from conception until natural death. I believe in the sanctity of human life. And I think the most eloquent words ever written were those in our Declaration of Independence that said it's a creator who endowed us with inalienable rights given to us from God, not from government. And the beauty of that is that government cannot take those rights away. Only God can give, and only God can take.
A new profile of Bachmann in the Daily Beast reveals the depth of her evangelical belief system, which she is able to signal in ways that often go over secular heads. Joining me now is Michele Goldberg, senior contributing writer for Newsweek and the Daily Beast, and author of Kingdom Coming, The Rise of Christian Nationalism. Michele, thanks so much for joining me. It's a fantastic profile.
Oh, hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
Okay, so you talked, the piece is called Michele Bachmann's Unrivaled Extremism. What is the kind of milieu, the world out of which Michele Bachmann has emerged?
Well, she's a perfect product of the religious right. You know, the kind of modern evangelical movement in this country began in the 1970s when there was a huge wave of people being born again all over the country, and she was swept up in that. She was born again in high school. She was involved in a group called Young Life. And initially, these evangelicals were very much drawn to the Jimmy Carter campaign because he was one of them. He was the first modern presidential campaign, or he was the first presidential candidate to talk about his evangelical faith. And then in the late 70s, they all veered very sharply to the right, which is exactly what happened to Michele Bachmann, who had campaigned for Carter, but then kind of partly under the influence of someone named Francis Schaeffer, who she often cites as being really pivotal to her intellectual development. He was the one that got evangelicals really fired up about abortion, which had previously been more of a Catholic issue. And he also came up with an idea that I think is very important for people to understand, and that's the idea of a biblical worldview, which essentially holds that all reality is determined by your kind of theological starting point. And so, you know, basically every single aspect of public life, of science, of history, of economics, everything is determined by your kind of religious belief, and only those with the correct religious beliefs can correctly perceive any sort of reality. And it's a way in which you can dismiss huge swaths of, you know, history, of things like evolution. You can basically say that kind of anything that doesn't fit with your ideology is the product of mistaken theological premises.
And there's this story you tell in it, aside from this sort of totalizing worldview, that I found so sort of striking and upsetting, actually, about her being virulently anti-gay in the policies and politics that she has marshaled, and that actually causing this very intense and profound rift inside her family.
Well, right. She didn't grow up evangelical. I mean, she grew up Lutheran, and although she often talks about being raised by a single mother, and sometimes she makes it seem as if she was on her own economically, in fact, you know, shortly after her father left the family, her mother remarried, and that man had several children of her own. Some of them were already out of the house, some of whom she grew up with, you know, who were her stepsisters, people that she was really close to, including Helen LaFave. And she's a lesbian. I don't think any of the step-siblings expected Michele Bachmann not to act on her religious convictions. But what really devastated them when Michele Bachmann was a state senator was the way she became the face of the anti-gay marriage movement. She was absolutely virulent. She was the one basically saying that, you know, unless this passes, homosexuals are going to be indoctrinating your children in the schools. And not only that, but then when it came out that she had a lesbian stepsister, some of Michele Bachmann's relatives went to a hearing that she was on the anti-gay marriage issue, just because they just wanted her to see them there and to kind of put a human face on these policies that she was pushing that were so hurtful to people in her own family. So it got into the news, and she basically said that she had actually polled the siblings. There's 9 in all, and that a majority were on her side, which really upset some of her step-siblings who say that, A, it didn't happen, and how vile to suggest that you would basically, you know, that kind of brothers and sisters would get together and take a vote on one of their members and vote against them.
Any of you who have members of your family in the lifestyle, we have member of our family, that is, I'm reading a quote that you have in the piece. This is not funny, it's very sad life. It is part of Satan, I think, to say this is gay. Michele Goldberg's fantastic profile of Michele Bachmann is in the Daily Beast today. Michelle's also author of a fantastic book which you should go out and buy and read right now called Kingdom Coming, and another great book called Means of Reproduction. Michele, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.